Today's project is how to make these adorable Brussels sprouts. Let me place them down and I will show you what you'll need. You will need a crochet hook. Today I'll be using my trusty 2.5mm clover hook. You'll also need a pair of scissors, a yarn needle to sew all the parts, a stitch marker, 2 safety eyes, and some toy stuffing. When it comes to yarn, I'm going to be using a DK weighted yarn, and I've chosen to do the Brussels sprouts in 2 shades of green. I'll need a little bit of pink for rosy cheeks and a bit of black yarn to make a smiley face. This will be today's colour palette. Let's start with making the leaves of our Brussels sprout. I'm going to be using a dark green yarn for this, and I will start with making a slip knot and attaching it to my hook. Next up, you want to chain 2 stitches. In the second chain from the hook, you want to place 6 single crochets. I'm going to speed up the video a little bit and meet you back once you have finished those 6 single crochets. Perfect! With round 1 complete, let's place a stitch marker in the very last stitch that we created so that we know where the end of the round is. If there's a hole forming in the centre of your work, give your yarn tail a little tug to close it, and then we can move on to round 2. For round 2, we're going to place an increase into each of the 6 stitches of round 1, and by that I mean we're going to place 2 single crochets into each of the stitches. At the end of round 2, you will have 12 stitches in total. Let's meet back at the end of the round. Let's replace the stitch marker. And again, if there's a hole forming in the centre of your work, give that yarn tail a little tug to close it, and we can move on to round 3. For round 3, we're going to do a single crochet followed by an increase, and we'll do that for the entire round. At the end of round 3, you will have 18 stitches in total. Let's begin round 4. For round 4, we're going to do 2 single crochets followed by an increase, and we'll do that for the entire round. At the end of round 4, you'll have 24 stitches. We're making excellent progress. We're on to round 5. And for this round, we're going to do 3 single crochets followed by an increase. And again, we will do this for the entire round. And at the end of the round, we will have 30 stitches in total. We've completed all the increasing rounds for the leaf, and round 6 is different, and let me talk you through it. We're going to start with a slip stitch into the first stitch. In the second stitch, we're going to do a half double crochet, so yarn over and push your hook through the second stitch, yarn over and pull that through until you have 3 loops, and then yarn over and pull the yarn through all 3 loops. The third stitch is a double crochet, so yarn over and push your hook through the stitch, Yarn over again and pull it through until you've got 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull the yarn through the first 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over one more time and pull that yarn through the second 2 loops on your hook. The 4th stitch is another half double crochet. We then finish the sequence with a slip stitch in the 5th stitch. And we're going to continue the rest of the round following that sequence, starting with a slip stitch, followed by a half double crochet, then a double crochet, then another half double crochet, and again ending with a slip stitch. Do this for the entire round, and then let's meet back at the end of round 6. Fantastic, that's us completed our first leaf. We're going to place our work down and grab our scissors and leave a long tail so that we can sew this leaf on to our Brussels sprout later. Pull your working yarn all the way through your final stitch to secure it, and let's have a quick look at our leaf. You'll see that it has a bit of a wavy look to it. This just gives it a little bit of a nicer texture. Next up, I'm going to ask you to grab your yarn needle and weave in the yarn tail that's at the very back of your work. You're going to want to rewind back to the beginning of this chapter and make 4 more leaves so that you have 5 in total. Let's meet back once you've created all 5 of your Brussels sprout leaves. Let's create our head of our Brussels sprout. I'm going to use the lighter green for this and start with making a slip knot and attaching it to my hook. Like before, we're going to chain 2 stitches. In the second chain from the hook, we're going to place 6 single crochets. Let's meet back at the end of this round. Let's grab our stitch marker and place it in the very last stitch that we created. And if a hole is forming in the center of your work, give your yarn tail a little tug to close it. Now we can begin round 2. And for round 2, we're going to be doing an increase into each of the 6 stitches of round 1. Like before, what I'm meaning by that is we're going to place 2 single crochets into each of the 6 stitches. At the end of round 2, we will have 12 stitches in total. Replace the stitch marker in the last stitch that you created, and if needed, give that yarn tail a little tug to close the hole in the center of your work. Let's move on to round 3. For round 3, we're going to do a single crochet followed by an increase, and we will do that for the entire round. At the end of round 3, we will have 18 stitches. We're now ready for round 4. And round 4 will be 2 single crochets followed by an increase, and again we will do this for the entire round, and at the end of round 4 we will have 24 stitches. We can now start round 5, which is our final increasing round. For round 5, we will be doing 3 single crochets followed by an increase. And like before, we'll do that for the entire round. At the end of round 5, we will have 30 stitches. That's us completed all the increasing rounds. For rounds 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, we're just going to be doing single crochets all of the way around. Let's meet back at the end of round 10 once you have completed all of these single crochets. With round 10 complete, we can now start seeing that the shape of our Brussels sprout is coming together. Let's get started on round 11. For round 11, we're going to start with 3 single crochets, followed by an invisible decrease using the next 2 stitches. And I will talk you through how to do an invisible decrease once we get there. Perfect. Now for the invisible decrease using the next 2 stitches. We're going to pass our hook through the center of each of the next 2 stitches so that we're grabbing the front loops only. And then we're going to continue to make our single crochet as normal. And there we have it. For the rest of the round, we're just going to continue doing that pattern of 3 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. At the end of round 11, we'll be left with 24 stitches. With round 11 complete, let's secure our work for a moment and take a pause, because I think this is the right time for us to start adding the face details to our Brussels sprout. As you can see, I've already added the first eye to our Brussels sprout, and I've placed it between rounds 3 and 4 and just slightly above the center of our work. Let's grab our other safety eye and the safety eye washer, and as a reminder, the safety eye washer has a curved side and a flat side, and when we're installing it, we're wanting this flat side to be up against the back of our work. I'm going to grab the head of my Brussels sprout and count along until I get to rounds 3 and 4 and insert the other safety eye. There we go, and just to be sure that I like the placement of the eyes, let's have a look at it. Perfect. To install the washer a little easier, I like to turn my work inside out, and then I grab my washer, and as a reminder, we want this flat side to be facing the back of our work. And we're going to push the washer onto the safety eye until it clicks and secures into place. There we have it, we've added the eyes, and let's move on to adding a smiley face and some cheeks. Let's start with adding a smiley face to our Brussels sprout. With some black yarn attached to your yarn needle, grab the head of your Brussels sprout, and we're going to use the inner corner of the right eye for guidance as to where we're going to start placing that smile. We want it to come in from the inner corner of the right eye and down a couple stitches, so about there, just below the center point of our work. And remember to leave a tail so that we can secure this yarn later. We then want to go in a straight line across the face of our Brussels sprout to the inner corner of the left eye. He looks a little bemused just now, but don't worry, we will turn that bemusement into a smile by coming down about 1 round beneath the line that we have just created and pulling that needle through, and then grabbing the center of that stitch with our needle and pushing it back up through there to make the V shape of a smile. To secure the smile, we're going to pass our needle back through the hole we came out of, and there we go. We have a happy Brussels sprout. We can secure the yarn by tying some knots in the back, and then we can move on to adding some cheeks. The rosy cheeks are of course optional, but if you choose to do them, grab some pink yarn and your yarn needle. We're going to start our rosy cheek about 1 stitch down from the center of the right eye. So round about here. Perfect. Pull your needle all the way through, leaving a yarn tail at the back in order for us to be able to secure the cheeks at the end. We're then going to go across about 2 rounds in a straight line in order to create the first part of the cheek. Perfect, just like that. And we're going to repeat that in exactly the same way, just to make the cheek a little bit thicker. With the first cheek complete, we can now move on to the second cheek. And again, we're going to place our needle about a stitch below the center of the left eye. And again, pull the needle through and then go across in a straight line about 2 rounds. Like before, we're going to do this twice in order to just emphasize those rosy cheeks. The final thing to do is to fasten off the yarn in order to secure it. And I just do that by tying a knot at the back of my work. We can move on to completing the rest of our Brussels sprout. Let's get our Brussels sprout completed. Detach your stitch marker from your work and then reattach it to the last stitch that you created on the last round. Reattach your hook to your work, and now we can begin round 12. For round 12, we're going to be doing 2 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease using the next 2 stitches. And we're going to follow that pattern for the entire round. At the end of round 12, you will have 18 stitches. This is a great place to take a stop, so grab your stitch marker and secure your work, and then we're going to take some toy stuffing and start stuffing the head of our Brussels sprout. With your toy stuffing in hand, I like to tear it up a little bit because I find it's less lumpy when I am stuffing any of my amigurumi. So let's stuff our Brussels sprout with our toy stuffing, and we're wanting it to be still squidgy but perfectly round. And don't worry, you'll have another opportunity to continue stuffing this Brussels sprout later on. Let's meet back once you've finished this task. Fantastic! With our Brussels sprout fully stuffed, we can start closing up the rest of it. So let's move on to round 13. Remove your stitch marker and place it back into the very last stitch of the final round that you've just created and reattach your hook. For round 13, we're going to do a single crochet followed by an invisible decrease using the next 2 stitches. And we're going to do that for the entire round. At the end of round 13, you'll be left with 12 stitches. If you're needing to, this is a great opportunity to add some more stuffing to your Brussels sprout. But if not, then let's replace our stitch marker in the very last stitch that we created and move on to round 14. Round 14 is just decreasing all of the way around. So at the end of round 14, you'll be left with 6 stitches, and I will show you how to close up your work. Well done, that has completed our final round, so all that's left to do is to make a cut in our yarn. We want to leave a long length of yarn so that we can use that to sew up the rest of the hole, and then we're going to pull that yarn through our final stitch to secure it. If you're needing to, this is your very last opportunity to add some more stuffing to your Brussels sprout. But if not, I will show you now how to close up your work. Let's get this Brussels sprout closed up. With your yarn tail, thread it into your yarn needle. And to close up our work, we're basically just going to be doing invisible decreases all of the way around. So grab the front loops of stitches 1 and 2, and then pull your yarn needle all the way through. Then do the same by grabbing the front loops of stitches 3 and 4. And as you pull the yarn needle, you'll start seeing that the hole is slowly closing up. All that's left to do is to do one more decrease using stitches 5 and 6. To secure this and get a better shape, I then pass my needle through the center of my work, and then I can weave in my ends from there. Perfect. That's our Brussels sprout fully closed. So continue by weaving in the ends of your yarn, and then I will show you how to attach all of the leaves to our Brussels sprout and finish this project. We're on the home stretch, and all that's left to do is to add our leaves onto our Brussels sprouts. So grab all 5 leaves and let's get started. Pick up your head and then turn it over and find the center point, as we're going to be using that as reference. Pick up your first leaf and looking at where your tail is and identifying where all of the bumps are all the way around, we're wanting to use the bump that is 1 bump below where the yarn tail is. And we're going to use that and attach that part to the center back point of our Brussels sprout. So let me grab some needles and secure it into place there. Next, we're going to use the yarn tail to sew the leaf onto our Brussels sprout. And we're only going to sew just over halfway. By doing that, it means we'll have 3 peaks of the leaf, 1, 2, 3, which are not attached to the head, and it just gives that extra bit of character. I would also recommend not sewing in all of your yarn ends until all of your leaves have been sewn on, just in case you want to do some extra stitches. Sew on each of your leaves individually. So when you get to your second leaf, again, we're looking for that second peak just below your yarn tail to be pointing in towards the center back point of your Brussels sprout. And you're going to then sew halfway around and then move on to your other 3 leaves. Let's meet back once you have sewn all of your leaves onto your Brussels sprout. All my leaves are attached, but you can see that I still have my yarn tails to weave in. And as I said before, I left them because I wanted to have the opportunity to just tighten up the leaves around the face of my Brussels sprout. So once you're happy with the placement and the tightness of the leaves around your Brussels sprout, go ahead and weave in those yarn tail ends. That's our Brussels sprout complete, leaves and all. Let me place him here with all his friends. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I'll see you soon for my next tutorial. In the meantime, please check out some of my other projects.